Halo in 2001 versus Halo in 2021. A whole 20-year difference. The game that started it all, Combat Evolved, was revolutionary for the time. The campaign specifically was so good that despite all the rapid growth the gaming industry has encountered, it's still a good game to sit down and play through. Although with so much time passing by since it came out, you will not have as many luxuries as something that Halo Infinite may provide. Updated visuals, new mechanics, and old ones being polished, and a story that is much further in. But that doesn't make a game good and overthrow the classic just because it's modernized and calculated for this time period. Rather, we should dive into specifics such as Infinite's open world, advanced movement, and how their missions are laid out in comparison to Combat Evolved, where they tap into a horror element in some areas that may just do it better. Also, real quick shout out, I've updated my Patreon to include early videos with no ads and the ability to comment early, name displayed on my videos and description, a private Discord where you can easily chat with me, and access to my scripts and thumbnails for videos like this. Combat Evolved's story taps into an element that Infinite does not. Both campaigns to begin with have similar foes. You're fighting grunts, jackals, elites, hunters, and the one enemy that Infinite has over Halo 1, brutes. Later you'll encounter the Sentinels, a part of the Forerunner faction. So already we have 3 different factions, one being us as humanity, another being the Covenant and Banished consisting of mostly the same troop types, and the Forerunners with their Sentinels. As far as the emotions they are supposed to invoke, they are all similar. The Covenant and Banished are the strong force that pushes humanity towards extinction. The Forerunners are the sometimes good, sometimes bad group, but add to the mysterious aura of the Halo rings. But Halo 1 takes it a step further and throws horror into the mix. Infinite doesn't provide as much variety and only strikes the same mystery and resilient forces within the Banished, Forerunners, and a little bit of a new faction called the Endless. While as in Combat Evolved, the pacing is what sets it apart. Firstly, you're introduced to a whole new mysterious ring full of life and uncovered secrets, fighting your way through the Covenant trying to figure out what they are really up to. About halfway through this journey, you get thrown a curveball and are loaded into a mission that is already very much different from what you've been experiencing. In a jungle with very moody lighting and hints of what's to come. You're quickly established with an aching feeling of something being terribly wrong and different, but you don't know what it is yet.
We are under attack by some new kind of hostile. This is Covenant. Captain Keyes has been captured by hostiles.
Even if this isn't your first rodeo and know everything about to come, you can still load up the level and get extremely immersed into this feeling of unsettling horror that is building up to a climactic discovery. Again, this is something Infinite never touched on, never even bothered including this kind of element even though it was totally possible. Halo Reach, a previous game in the series, was able to invoke horror through the Covenant and brought their reality more to life in the games. But as of right now, the Covenant isn't the fearing faction we should be worried about, which just shows you how meaningful the presence of this unknown enemy is.
Stay back! Stay back! You're not turning me into one of those things! I'll blow your brains out! Get away from me!
Spoiler alert for those who don't know or remember, it's, of course, the Flood. They are the main vessel for making Halo tap into a scary side. But okay, that's just one distinct difference that Halo 1 offers. Infinite picks up a little more in some of the movement variety. Of course this is bound to happen as the series is much more modern, but it's still a distinct difference. The biggest addition was the implementation of a grappling hook, a man's new best friend when it came to getting around. It has unlimited uses with a short recharge rate allowing you to quickly traverse any location. It's also attachable to enemies. In Halo 1, you were only able to move around at one solid pace unless you found or were given a vehicle. Now you can also sprint around, use your grappling hook, slide, and still use vehicles. What this did was add to the gameplay loop and give you more options on how to go about things. The only problem is that if you don't like it, well, it's going to suck avoiding using it as the game is designed completely around it, just as Combat Evolved is designed to not have any advanced movement mechanics. Sometimes it's good to keep things simple as it's easier to execute and it's just easier to process for the player. Other times, additions can really pay off and become a part of the formula. The movement in Halo Infinite was built for and is encouraged in one of the biggest innovations they tried bringing to the series, the open world experience. This was by far the biggest standout in Infinite's campaign. No longer are we getting a linear mission list, but now instead we're on an entire Halo ring as our open world with a few different things to be discovered. This section is going to be open world versus our linear mission style in Combat Evolved, as my opinions are torn on this one. I say that because what we got in Infinite was great for something new, but at the same time it ruined a lot of things we were comfortable with. First, let's address the positives here. With any open world, you are expected to explore and be rewarded for it. In this case, I really liked the Easter eggs that were scattered about, able to find things such as a cool arcade machine. There aren't a lot of them, at least unique ones, but they at least give you something to discover. Although the side activities aren't anything special, it was fun having more content than the standard missions we are used to. Bosses especially had a decent incentive to track down and eliminate. If you did take them down, you were rewarded with a unique weapon variant that you can spawn in at any base location you have captured on the map. I don't really care all that much to equip them as ammo gets depleted quick, but you can load up a few Marines and put them on a Warthog and obliterate almost anything in your path. This is where most of the fun ends for open world Halo. Why I am so torn is because there was so much potential to make this experience better. So I don't really know if I prefer this over a linear style of play. As for the potential we missed out on, it can be a few things. Environment variety is incredibly lackluster here. Everything outside is basically the same. A lot of standard places and not much stands out. Where's our different biomes? Combat Evolved did this better as we had our grassy warmer weather, then jumped into areas such as a swampy jungle and a snowy filled battlefield. Even when just taking the day and night difference, Combat Evolved was much darker, which set stronger tones. Upon walking outside and being opened up to much more of the Halo ring in Infinite, it is a very cool sight. But as you log more and more hours, you're only seeing the exact same thing you saw at the beginning. It's also not executed very well, design-wise. Every area, despite it being in the same environment, looks incredibly generic and dull to look at. The only time things got switched up is anytime we were underground, such as in these caves. I love this red reflection. The Forerunner design they also really nailed. It has very strong lighting and color that makes me wish we were down here more often. I'm so serious when I say I get stuck in awe at almost any moment I'm in the Forerunner structures. It's sad they didn't include any more biomes like a sandy one. They were able to make it look incredible in the multiplayer side of the game. Why couldn't they even add it here? You'll quickly realize that this open world is not that fulfilling, and that's where I say Infinite should have just stuck to linear missions. It's much more convenient being able to boot up a mission from the menu in one single clean list. But convenience aside, a linear campaign is much easier to make unique. Combat Evolved had memorable missions. We've already established the Flood presence and what that was able to create, but there's other moments too, like the beach landing with the Marines. Or maybe the first time we enter a Covenant ship.
Contact! Lots of contact!
Maybe it's our drive through the snowy and icy landscape to get to the control room. Some levels were quite repetitive and clearly just reused maps we previously played through, but there was enough switched up to make it manageable. Infinite had very few missions that stuck out to me. There was a few story moments in the cutscenes that I liked a lot.
It worked. You did it. Just like you always do.
But not much was capturing me in the way Halo 1 did. The most memorable moments were down in the Forerunner structures and anything that banked on nostalgia. If there was more environment variety, more unique standouts from mission to mission, then I could see Infinite putting up a better fight. I do wish they had something in the menu to be able to play the campaign from any point. Missions are just cluttered on the open world map and isn't a good way at presenting a level. You don't even get an image preview that helps define what a level is all about. It's just like a thumbnail on a YouTube video. It helps you put together much more information. Scrolling through Combat Evolved's mission list, I can remember almost what every single level is about. I get a strong sense of that. I attempt at browsing through Infinite and it just all starts falling apart. None of them really stand out to me, and I play a guessing game on what each level was about. So my nitpick here is that having a set list of missions in an easy identifiable way helps add to memorability and also replayability if you were to ever revisit the campaign, which I have ended up doing multiple times for Combat Evolved, and I have attempted with Infinite. It's a small change that can go so far if handled properly. Alright, we already talked about a few differences in gameplay, but let's get down to what does what better. First example, the guns. Bias views inbound, but the shotgun from Combat Evolved is much better than Infinite's version. It is much more powerful and had a strong purpose. It was incredible against the Flood and will most likely be your choice of weapon going against them. I honestly never really saw the shotgun up until the first Flood level, 343 Guilty Spark. It's easy to guess as to why it wasn't commonly seen early on. We had enough treats with weapons like the sniper and rocket to hold us over, but after you got bored of using those, now you're reawakened with a shotgun, and there's no better time to use it than now, as the Flood will try their best to swarm you. While other weapons can be effective, they won't be as handy as CE's shotgun that can quickly put down any Flood presence. Each shot packed a strong punch, while Infinite's was more known for getting rounds out quicker. Its use wasn't really needed here as there were so many better options. A lot of the guns in CE just felt better using. They had purpose and didn't feel unbalanced. The neither was more effective in the first game compared to Infinite, although I do like how Infinite feels, but it's pretty weak and chews through ammo. There are of course weapons fans have become accustomed to, but weren't actually present in CE at the time. Ones such as the battle rifle and energy sword, but then lack options like the magnum and plasma rifle. They did do a good job at adding some newer weapons, which gets harder to do when you've already added so many in the past. I think most a CE does weapons best, but Infinite does have some variety, especially in their weapon variants that give them a little boost. A few weapons stuck out that I liked a lot, like the Sentinel Beam, the Skewer, and as well the Stalker Rifle. Another gameplay difference is that Halo Infinite allowed you to upgrade yourself. This was more in support of the open world system, but I could see it working in the linear style as well. It wasn't complex, but it was the start of giving some decisions to the player and encouraging them to play the game so they'd be a more powerful version of themselves. The ones I only ever cared about is the health upgrades and the grappling hook that eventually allowed you to send a shockwave blast when pulling yourself into enemies. If we had this in CE, just implemented differently, it could be even more encouraging for players to explore around these levels and find these rewards that'll allow you to upgrade your Spartan after each level, or even just completing certain tasks can reward you with them.
Get Cortana off this ship. Keep her safe. If they capture her, they will learn everything. Force deployment, weapons research, Earth.
Now, a good story is going to be the key ingredient to keeping players engaged enough to find out what's going to happen next. When it comes to both games, I think they are both solid enough that you can sit through a playthrough of it at least one time. But again, with such a massive difference in the release dates, there will be plenty different, especially the environments they build around our story. Infinite takes a lot of inspiration from Combat Evolved. You got lots of open green land with huge landmarks that typically will hold some sort of significance. They were able to take advantage of what Combat Evolved couldn't do at the time and truly gives us more open spaces to encourage even more exploration. Wildlife, while it was hyped up and had majority of it cut, was still more present than what we got in CE. But because this was an open world game, there was a lot more ground to cover and design was so much more spread out. Combat Evolved was able to focus on several set pieces that were much more effective. Previously we talked about the tones of each level and how each one is unique. So to add on to that with set pieces, we can take some of the most memorable ones. That being places like the underground Forerunner structure in the second mission where you have to activate the bridge in the middle. Truth and Reconciliation had the wonderful grav lift that was deploying reinforcements constantly until it was your turn to go up it. Then the control room that you'll end up going in twice. Infinite had plenty of set pieces, but again, so many of them seemed so familiar that they all started becoming generic. There wasn't much special about them, and if there was, it wasn't showcased in an effective manner. As far as the storyline goes, Infinite is much deeper. I don't mean it's better, but it's just going to strike a lot deeper into the hearts of people. They simply have the stories built from multiple games to work with here. Master Chief by this point is a living legend in both his world and our world. You get that from a more normal guy like Echo 216, who is first filled with joy when rescuing Chief from his time lost in the void of space.
Yes! Yes! Yes!
And later on, Chief is there to reassure and bond with him, having a very humanizing moment. It felt like a little adventure with the characters of Master Chief, Echo 216, and the new replacement for Cortana. What I did wish for was more main characters adding to our group. Even by Halo CE standards, the group was also quite small. You had Chief, Cortana, Captain Keyes, Echo 419, and a little of Sergeant Johnson if you count him, as he molded into a much bigger role in Halo 2. But side characters played a much bigger part and had memorable moments. They had some charm. We see a lot of it occur in the cutscene of 343 Guilty Spark when we discover what happened to the lost group of Marines who were with Captain Keyes. In Halo Infinite, there's not much character building outside our main cast. We rescue plenty of Marines and set up forward operating bases, yet I don't know the name of a single one and are only in the gameplay. They aren't incorporated into our story of events, and I almost always forget about them. The most we got was from a dying Spartan that we get to meet for about a minute. It was a good moment, but we needed more of it. The opportunities were there, just hardly ever any were taken. And I think that closed off too much. So, Combat Evolved does the world building much better, while Infinite strikes deeper and can tug onto the heart at several times. If you were to ask me which game is better to play, well, for a first time playthrough, it might be a toss-up. Mostly because Infinite is the newer game and has that advantage. Combat Evolved has much more replayability in my opinion, with a very classic and straightforward way of playing, making it much more enjoyable for someone like me. I think it executed well enough with its linear style campaign, while Infinite tried getting too innovative and falling flat. But it does have potential if a sequel was to work out all the things that made Infinite not so great. I find myself revisiting Halo CE, but never Infinite. So for that reason alone, it's very easy for me to say Combat Evolved is the better campaign experience.